Welcome back to Gale Force Winds Season 2.
The Gale Force Winds podcast is proudly sponsored by Newfound Marketing, a digital marketing agency located in St. John's, Newfoundland. Visit our website at newfoundmarketing.ca to find out how we can help your business grow. Newfound Marketing, a complement to your marketing team.
Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jerry Carew and welcome back to an episode of Gale Force Winds. Today is a very special Gale Force Winds, and I'm going to introduce our guest now in a second, but we are doing something a little bit different. We're going to actually do a walking tour, and we're going to record that as we walk. I bought a gimbal. I've used gimbals before. This one's a little more advanced, so forgive me, Pierre, if we if we stumble a little bit. But first of all, what I'd like to do is introduce or ask Pierre Trowbridge to introduce himself. So Pierre, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Jerry. Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Pierre Trowbridge. I'm born and raised in Arnold's Cove, Newfoundland, about an hour west of St. John's here, and Jerry and I are here today because beginning on July 1st, I'm going to be offering walking tours of downtown St. John's.
This is awesome. Just before we go forward, we interviewed a guy in Crete who was from Arnold's Cove Station. He was very, very particular about making sure that we said it was Arnold's Cove Station.
Yeah.
Can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was a really interesting interview. Tell us a little about your life growing up in Arnold's Cove.
Well, I've always said Arnold's Cove was a great place to grow up. Being a small town and, lots of wilderness around and everything, it was a great place to grow up. We had freedom as kids that, kids that growing up in cities just don't have available to them and stuff. So, you grow up there, you got, your same friends from kindergarten to grade 12 and, just a small cohesive community where everybody knew everybody most of the time,
Now, I did read a little bit about you. You've done a bit of travel since you grew up in Arnold's Cove. Just talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go on our tour.
A little bit, yeah. I guess initially I did some right here in Canada, as I've lived in different areas of Canada, Alberta, Ontario, the Yukon for a little while. But in 2010, I finally started some international travel, and I spent a number of years teaching in South Korea. And then just prior to the pandemic, I was teaching in China for nearly 5 years, and that was a pretty unique and interesting experience there.
What part of China were you in?
For the most part, I was in the southeast. If you look on a map and you find Taiwan and you go directly west, you'll find Fujian province, and that's the area of China that I lived in for 4 of the 5 years I was there.
So what has travel meant to you?
Travel for me, it's something I've always wanted to do. I can remember being a young kid and experiencing wanderlust for the first time, and so that desire for travel, that curiosity about seeing the world and everything was something that I carried with me my whole life. So the travel for me was, I don't want to sound cliche, but it was a dream come true because I'd been dreaming about it my whole life and finally took the leap and go and do it. And it's been a life-changing experience. I've learned so much about myself, grew in confidence in so many different ways.
You know what I find about travel, and I was lucky enough to get a lot done when I was young, was when you're in another place, it's one thing to be in the place you grew up. I do feel alive in the place I grew up, but I really feel alive when I'm somewhere else because every single second I find it's new. Do you have somewhat of an experience like that?
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. Yeah, definitely. A lot of what I call cold shiver moments, where it's just... the emotion and the passion and everything of the moment just sort of almost overwhelms you, just to get that cold shiver go up your back kind of thing, right? But yeah, a lot of those kind of moments. It's like what you said, like where everything is new, every second is new, everything is a new adventure. It's like your senses are at a heightened level at all times because you've always got all this new information and everything coming at you,
We're going to go on the tour in a second. One of the things that I'm really, really curious about, we've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. We're very proud that we've posted actually 117 prior to me and you sitting here, 117 last night. We've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who are well ahead in their business. You and Melissa Hogan are just starting. You're in the infancy stages. When I found out she was doing this, I was like, Melissa, we need to have an episode with you. Just talk briefly about the inspiration around why it is you're doing this and what it means to you and Melissa.
Oh, well, that's
a lot, eh?
That could be a big story. I'll try to keep it relatively brief, I suppose, or short. Well, as I mentioned, I'd been in China for nearly 5 years, and I was traveling, winter vacation, me and my bicycle in Vietnam, and COVID basically started following me down the highway, and I never got to go back to China. So I arrived back here in March of 2020, just before the country fully locked down, with nothing more than my travel clothes and a bicycle and a camera. And, here and there over the last couple of years, it's like, what to do going forward, to use my life experiences and, whatever skills and abilities that I had to do something different and something new. And Melissa and I are both experienced travelers, and she's actually in Portugal right now traveling.
And very excited about that.
I'm very excited about it. I've been seeing a lot of pictures. I'm very envious, I have to say.
She did that because I invited her on this podcast, eh?
That's right. She did all that just to avoid coming and sitting down here and talking about us today. But no, we started thinking about what we could do, and we were looking at the tourism landscape here in St. John's, and we saw an obvious gap in walking tours. And we thought, with our travel experience and all the experiences that we have doing different kinds of tours and stuff like that, we thought we had what it took to make this work. And so we started digging in on it, and here we are, just about 10 days away from official launch.
How excited are you?
Oh my God, it's tough to put into words. It ranges though between being excited and a little bit terrified, but I think if you don't have a little bit of that fear is healthy, because it just means you will do the work that you need to do to make sure things are good and you present a product that you're happy with, So, but excitement, oh my God, I can't wait to get going, to get taking people around St. John's and tell them about our amazing city.
So you've worked and had a paycheck from others. Now you're on your own. This is all you. I find that transition fascinating.
So the whole process began with a call to somebody, to a woman named Wendy at St. John's Tourism. And we ended up talking to a whole bunch of people in different, small business development places. We talked to a guy at the YMCA, Ted Cadigan, and eventually we ended up talking to MBOC, and they put us onto something called the SEA program.
MBOC is what?
Metro Business Opportunities.
Okay.
They're out on Topsail Road out there. They're basically the St. John's version of CDBC, is it? Canadian Development Business Corporation?
Right.
Those guys are outside of St. John's. MBOC is inside St. John's. So we went to them and we put together a business proposal idea. They thought it was worthy of further investigation, so we had 10 weeks. We put together a business plan, and just 6 days ago we got the final sign-off on the business plan, and now for the next 42 weeks I am funded by the SEA program. So it really gives me a sense of security that I wouldn't otherwise have to start up a venture like this, because I've got a base income to take care of the essentials, and hopefully the business will take care of itself and provide more as time goes by and we build this thing.
Pierre, thanks for telling us that. You know what? It's wonderful to hear. There's so many opportunities out there. There's so many organizations that are out there to help entrepreneurs get going. They've given you the ability to overcome that fear of not having any income whatsoever. So for that, I applaud everybody that's been involved in making sure that this business gets off the ground. So I'm going to get ready now to stand up and make this tour happen. As I said, this is my first time using this gimbal. I have practiced with it, but bear with me. It's a little bit of a more advanced gimbal than I've ever used before. So if you see it focusing on the sky, there could be a reason for that. So here we go.
Here we go. All right. Okay, so far so good.
Just first things first, just pull that up. Okay, perfect. Now I got a cable. All right, let's. I'm going to throw it over to you, and I might interrupt you a little bit. We're not going to do a full tour, I don't think. No, we'll just do a little bit. We'll give people a taste of what it's like.
Sure. We begin to tour here on George Street because this is sort of like the entertainment center of the the city, so I figured this is a good place to stop. And pretty much any visitors that come here, at some point in time, they'll find their way to George Street.
Right.
And so it's a good place to start. And, you know, it's an interesting history. It's, 2 blocks of nothing but bars and restaurants. The most, what's the word? The most dense stretch of bars and restaurants anywhere in North America, something like that. That was very terribly said.
That's fine. There was a time when I spent a lot of time down here. Haven't been down here in probably 3 decades,
Yeah.
but anyway.
I just noticed one little interesting shop there, Lottie's Place, where they sell, the home of the White Russian, they say, sell more milk than any bar in town. It's been said of George Street that this is where people come, for their morals and their liver to die, and I think White Russians is probably a pretty good way to start that. But, you know, if White Russians are not your thing, there's lots of different forms of entertainment, different kinds of bars around here where you can go and find whatever kind of spirits that, set you on fire, get you going for the night and have a good time.
Forgive us for a second. We're walking up the road, and there's a big white pickup that you'll see going behind that was just looking like it was going to run us over. But anyway, we're fine.
We managed to avoid that, so that's good. So yeah, George Street Festival coming up very soon. Typically, it's the George Street Festival is the 6 days that lead up to Regatta, the first Wednesday of pickup truck to saw. There we go.
People working on the decks, so it should be interesting audio.
Yeah, it could be interesting. A lot of decks being built in St. John's these days with the pedestrian mall and all that kind of stuff. So, where were we? Oh,
Look at that. Wow.
yeah,
Geez, there's a lot of work going on down here.
a whole new line. I noticed that the other day they were jackhammering concrete
Yeah.
off the second floor level there to put that wood in and stuff. So big job.
A lot
Behind
of
us.
investment going in. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yep.
we got a new business going in here. It's going to be called Adelaide Motors Brewing. The name comes from a car dealership that was there back in the 1950s called Adelaide Motors, and they've sold mostly Studebakers and Land Rovers. So the bar is going to go in and pay homage to the name of the motor vehicle place that was there before, the car
That's
dealership.
fascinating, Pierre.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's very. St. John's has got a lot of interesting things going on now. It's not just like our tour is not just a history tour, because we want people to know the St. John's that we have today as well. Because I think it's a beautiful city, a fascinating city, a lot of great people, and interesting tales. So I want them to know more than just the history, you know. But if you want to speak about history and something that a lot of visitors like to partake in when they come here, behind us here right now we have Christians. And Christians is where
Better get in. We're in the middle of the road.
we're in the middle of the road. And George Street is a it's cars can drive here during the daytime, but they won't be here at night, folks. So you'll be safe at night. Christians is where the infamous Newfie Screech Inn was born back in the early 1970s. By a guy named Merle Vokey, and he did this ceremony as a hosting a teachers conference. I was trying to think of something to do for a bit of entertainment. So apparently Merle came up with the idea for the Screech Inn, where you say the silly words, you kiss the fish, and you drink some really bad Jamaican rum. You know, so it's
And it's really caught on, hasn't it?
and it really has, yeah. And there's other places around town that there are other bars around that will do it. A number of the whale watching tours and things that go out from around these parts in the summer, they also do this. So there's lots of places to go and get yourself turned into a new honorary Newfoundlander if that's what you want to do. You say the silly words and you put on the yellow hat and stuff, but it's a good bit of fun, and
it's funny, some people
you get
don't,
a certificate.
There are some people that don't particularly like it, think there's Newfie stereotypes and all this, but you know what? I think it's an incredible amount of fun. My 14-year-old is really good at doing it, so we've done a few in our house.
Nice.
So
That's cool. Yeah, I know what you mean. I've come across some of that in my research for the tour and about the Screech Inn. There's a lot of people think it perpetuates the stereotype of the drunken Newfoundlander.
this way?
Well, typically we will go this way.
Okay, whatever you want to do. You tell me.
Let's go see the Chinese one.
Okay. So where is it we're heading?
We're heading over here now. There's a little place just here off of George Street between George and New Gower where the first Chinese laundry in St. John's was opened in 1895.
And we typically don't walk, your tour won't walk in the middle of the road like I am. I'm doing this, I'm kind of dragging you here, so it's easier for me to walk.
We're going to go to the right there, Jerry.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, one good thing about it is when the tour starts up officially on July 1st, Water Street will be a pedestrian mall then, right. So there will be no vehicular traffic at all, and we'll be able to just take our time and stroll down the middle of the road.
That's good, because it's really busy here today.
It is. George Street, because folks can't drive in here at night, they do all their deliveries and all their work and everything during the daytime. Yeah. So here we are is where the first Chinese laundry opened here.
Oh yeah.
And not a lot of people actually realize that this place is even here. And so the first one that was opened here in 1895 was at Sung Lee and Company. And it was right here on this very spot. And of course, the way these things always work, one person comes here and they open a business and they start to make money, and then other people see that possibility exists, right? So a bunch of other Chinese people, mostly men, very few women came, especially in the early days. And they started opening more laundromats and cafes and restaurants and things of that nature. And as often happens, locals got concerned about the number of people moving in. So in the early 1900s, the government's put a head tax on any Chinese immigration into Newfoundland at the price of 300 Newfoundland dollars. Wow. Which was about 3 years' salary.
That's in 1906?
Yeah, 1906. So that's 3 years' salary in 1906. 300 Newfoundland dollars. Now you notice I say Newfoundland dollars. Yeah. Because from 1865 till we joined Confederation in 1949, we did have our own dollar based on the gold standard that we adopted in 1865.
All right, just give me 1 second. I'm going to switch hands here because this is an interesting experience. I'll try and do it without dropping everything. All right. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, about the quality of the video as I do that. But yeah, so just describe exactly where we are for people.
So we are, what is it? Just a second. Number 37 New Gower Street. We are immediately across from St. John's City Hall. Yep. And between New Gower Street and George Street.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is, you know what? I actually have never seen this before.
And a lot of people haven't, and that's why one of the things, it's one of my favorite stops on the entire tour. The fact that I spent nearly 5 years living in China probably has a little bit to do with my affinity for this story. Because I've seen so many Chinese people and how hard they work for their families and all that kind of stuff, right? So I can only imagine how dedicated these men that came here, and if you look at the photo, you can see it's almost entirely men. I think it might actually be entirely men in that photo. But the dedication that they showed, the hard work that they were willing to sacrifice 3 years' salary just to get in here. You know, I think that says a lot about their work ethic and their dedication for family and future.
I can't even imagine. Can you imagine having to pay out 3 years' salary?
No, I can't imagine
paying one. 1 month's salary.
I was thinking a week even.
All right.
Okay, so we'll go back the way we just came here, and we'll hit the Water Street.
All right. I came close to falling over that time.
Yeah, you watch your step. There's lots of people that fall over down here, but I think it's mostly after night, you know?
Yeah.
After dark. Maybe after a few of those White Russians or something, right?
This is an interesting thing to do, though, to get someone who's knowledgeable in the area to go around and give an actual formal tour. I can see the value in this for even local people, right?
All the people, like we've done a couple of beta tours so far, and got a lot of really positive feedback and some new ideas. And well, even as we were just sitting and chatting before we fired up, a guy heard us talking and came by with an idea that I have to just double check and research before I can add it to the Chinese laundry story, right? But there's been so much of that, and you know, all the people that we've had have mostly been locals, except for one former co-worker who was originally from Peru and married to a local man, and you know, and she loved it. You know, so that was encouraging for me because she's not originally from here, but she came here, doesn't know a lot about St. John's, and enjoyed the tour so much and the different stories that I shared with them. That just gives me even that little bit more encouragement to keep going. And then I've done a lot of research and a lot of work so far, and it's paying off. But the hardest part, there's just so much interesting stuff. Where do you cut the line? It's hard to.
Now, it's a beautiful day here in St. John's. Funny, it's supposed to get up to around 22 degrees, but it is a little cool. So let's talk a little bit about the weather. Pierre, what's the plan when it's raining?
Well, I don't think we have it on the website at the booking area yet, but it will be going on there that there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes.
Right.
So unless the weather is exceptionally bad, it will go ahead. If I'm going to do a walking tour in St. John's and I'm going to cancel it every time there's a little bit of rain, I'm not going to make much money. People are not going to get to do many tours, So we're just going to have to, And what I've discovered too from talking to different people and stuff is that the visitors that come here, they come prepared for these things. You can see them walking around. They got their tilly hats and their hiking boots, and they got their raincoats and their rain pants and stuff. So if they get inclement weather, they're ready for it. And so we have to be ready for it as well.
Yes, you're right. And I was golfing one time in Terranova, and these two guys from Texas happened to be playing with me. And I apologized because it was like 13 degrees in July. And they looked at me and they said, it's like 120 in Texas right now. We are here because of the weather. Yeah. And you know what, Pierre? That has changed my attitude towards our weather ever since. And that was about 20 years ago. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I tell you, you asked me earlier about the impact and influence of travel. And one thing is I just find that I've developed a tolerance for our weather, shall we say? Or I used to dislike it so much, but it doesn't bother me anymore. I guess some of that's just a bit of maturity as well, I guess. But when I was traveling, if the weather was bad, I had to keep going because I did a lot of my travels on a bicycle. So there's no option to hop in the bus and just coast through the day kind of thing, But
what's interesting? It's you realize how noisy it can be down here when you start doing a podcast like this.
Exactly. And that's been the biggest challenge with a couple of beta tours that we've done so far is just finding places where the noise is not too much. Like at a light is about the best time because all the vehicles have stopped, right? But
you know what? I'll make a point about that. This city is alive.
It really is.
Really alive.
Really is. Newfoundland has been known throughout its history for economic ups and downs, perhaps more downs than ups. But one thing about the spirit of the people in this province, man, is that we just keep fighting through. Yeah. We don't give up. This is our home. We love it, and we don't want to go if we don't have to. There was a time 3 years ago, I remember coming home on vacation from China, and so many empty storefronts along Water Street, and especially right in the heart of it. And you go, oh man, you hate to see that. You hate to see these local businesses, not surviving, but they're coming back. These storefronts are bit by bit. Somebody else is moving in and filling them up. So it's that indomitable spirit of man. To just try something new and to keep moving forward. And so it's busy. There's a lot of people coming here this summer, and it could be a record summer for visitors, and I think they're going to love it here. They should.
I think
it's
there's
a great
lot
place.
Around already. Just a point, I guess, about the pedestrian mall. I'm going to just do a little circular thing here now. There's an enormous number of decks already ready, and you say it's July 1st is when it's going to be open, is it?
Or June 30th or July 1st? June 30th or July 1st.
So
might be the
coinciding right when you guys
absolutely.
ramp up.
Yep.
Brilliant.
So the first day that we have a tour, we'll be walking right down here, and instead of all these vehicles passing by us, it'll be just other pedestrians walking by. It'll be really nice and quiet. This will be the third year now for the pedestrian mall in St. John's, and it's just been a massive success for the businesses in downtown.
Pierre, what's amazing? I'm looking at we got 24 minutes recorded, and we're what, 1/100th of the way, probably.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Where do you want to take us next?
Well, so many places to choose from. How about we head down towards Atlantic Place?
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about the Great Fire of 1892. St. John's, the history of the city of St. John's is basically a lot of build it, burn it, build it, burn it, build it. And let's hope we don't burn it again. But a lot of fires. The construction of St. John's was more, in its early years, more haphazard than by any plan. Settlement was actually discouraged here until it just got to the point that people were staying, even though the British Crown really didn't want them to stay here. So they just kind of said, yeah, okay, but it wasn't supposed to be any kind of permanent structures and stuff, you know. So it kind of built up, just everything built on top of one another. Even as you can see, like with the buildings and stuff down here today, it's still, you know, everything abutted to one another. So the problem, of course, with that type of construction and everything is just wood, is that when you get a fire, it's hard to stop that thing. And so the fires that have ravaged St. John's have burnt pretty much the entire city when we've had them. One thing I've noticed about St. John's that's changed a lot in the last 10 to 15 years when I've spent most of the time away, is this city has become so much more diverse.
Incredible, isn't it?
It really is. I love to see it personally, because I think the more different people that we have here, the more different personalities that we have in this place, it's just good for the city, you know? And a lot of the people that move here, they have that entrepreneurial spirit, you know, and then from my travels, and I'm sure you've seen it in yours, that the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well. For sure. Right?
One thing strikes me whenever I'm walking down here, I actually reflect a little bit on my own family, and I think some of these, like the facades of these buildings, are the same as when my great-grandparents were walking here. So there's always, I find, a sense of history, as you walk here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, even if we want, we could stop here for a second and look right behind us there at this place called Nonia. Nonia is an interesting little piece of Newfoundland history. It was started in the 1920s. There was difficulty getting nurses and having nursing stations in the outports. I got my notes here. I could get the person's name for you. I'll dig it up. But they started it with outport women using their knitted goods to raise money for nurses and nursing stations. It eventually became incorporated, and it became the first source of income for a lot of outport women in Newfoundland. And we're talking like the 1920s, 1930s, when women in outport Newfoundland are for the first time ever earning their own money. It's the organization's still going on today. It's well known all over the world for the high quality of its knit goods, and I think it's an amazing story, and I'm glad to see that this store is still surviving, and I hope it'll survive for a long time yet.
Amazing.
And it's still largely the knitted goods are still largely sourced from outport women. I think there's still about 130 or so on staff, but now at this point when they lose some, it's getting more and more difficult to replace them because there just isn't the number of people with the high level of skill required to to complete the high level quality of goods that they provide at Nonia. Right? So, but an interesting story nonetheless.
Fascinating. So many stories. I can see why your walking tour is important.
Yeah, it's, and like I said before, it's so hard to know which stories to leave in, which stories to leave out. Like if we look over there, we can see the Grace Building. Oh, pardon me. Now the Grace Building itself, it's a nice piece of architecture, but the business that ran out of there in the early 1900s. Pardon me, I got to get the guy's name. A guy named John Anderson had a business in there from 1898 to 1913. But now his business is not what makes it important, but he was one of the driving forces between bringing daylight savings time to Newfoundland in 1917. So the guy that had a business operating in there 120 years ago is the guy who brought us daylight savings time.
Did not know that.
Now every time I tell that story, usually somebody goes, "Oh, so that's the guy." But
yeah, well, we'll see what'll happen with what the United States is doing. I think that's going to change a little.
What's that?
They're changing the daylight savings time. I don't know all the details. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think Canada may have to follow suit. Otherwise, it'll be out of sync completely.
Yeah.
I'm sure Newfoundland will still have its own unique time zone, probably.
I'm sure. That 30 minutes is always going to make us a little bit unique. No doubt about it.
Geez, Pierre, man, this place is rocking.
I know. And it's not even anywhere, like it's not peak yet, right? And the streets are jam-packed down here,
I remember in the middle of the pandemic, coming down here, driving, days on end and not seeing a soul.
Yeah.
No cars parked, nothing, right?
It's almost like one of Ron Hines' old songs.
Yeah.
You know, but no change in the weather, no change in me. You know that song?
Yeah.
You can shoot off a cannon from the middle of Bond and attract no attention in downtown St. John's. That's what it was like here in the 80s, right? Pretty much. But during the pandemic days, I know I live just near the downtown, so I'd come down here some days and it'd feel like you had the whole place to yourself. It was remarkable how quiet it was. But now it's, a beautiful day. You can see the people are enjoying their time here, and just a really nice bustling city today. And St. John's, when it's got its, when it's full of life and it's buzzing, man, it's a great place to be.
It is, isn't it?
And look at that, look at that. I don't know if you can pick that up on the gimbal, but you can see the building down the road there being shrouded by the fog.
Okay, let's turn and then
I don't know if you can see that.
the Fortis building right off in the distance. So anyone who's looking, the white building just to the right, I guess, of the street light. I'm trying to think of what the viewer is going to see when they look at it. Anyway, the building in the distance, for anyone who lives here will know the building, but the fog is shrouding the building. And that's a common thing here. I remember, it's funny, my son was at Ballyhaley Golf Course, so I dropped him off there this morning, and he goes, "Dad," he said, "is this going to be like this all summer, the fog?" And I said, "Son, I remember in mid-July it would be 30 degrees playing baseball, and you look and you could see from where we were playing baseball the fog rolling in, and of course the temperature would go from 30 to probably 13 so
in the snap of your fingers, right? I know, like growing up in Arnold's Cove, it was like that. Arnold's Cove used to have the nickname Home of the Fog. It was that foggy out there.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'll send them the bill for my hearing aid. It was known as the Home of the Fog, and even on our warmest summer day, that fog was never far out in the bay, and man, you could be sure as soon as summertime was over, it was coming right in on you. We'll take a quick shot here.
Okay.
Now you can see on the wall up behind there is the mural that commemorates the 1892 fire.
I just switched hands again.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. You want to get on this side over here?
Oh yeah, sure.
So the mural is right up there, right?
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
You're famous. At least to one person anyway.
I went through business school with her.
Oh, very good, very good. So you can see in the background painted up there is a mural that commemorates the 1892 fire. Now that's the last great fire that we had, and it destroyed almost the entire city. There's a couple of buildings here on different parts of Water Street that managed to survive it. One that we passed just back there a little while ago, Irene's. It's they say the oldest souvenir shop on the oldest street in North America, or whatever, and the oldest city. But the 1892 fire was avoidable. Like the extent of the damage was avoidable, but it was just a mixture of unfortunate things that came together all at once and just set the city on fire. It started where somebody dropped a pipe in a stable just up at the top of Carter's Hill near Freshwater Road. But there was a water tower for the fire department nearby, but unfortunately they hadn't bothered to fill the tank back up from their previous fire drill, so there was no water in this massive tank that they had there. The fire hydrant system had no water pressure because the city worker had turned it off for scheduled work earlier in the day and didn't tell anybody about it. And by the time they got it going back up, there was just not enough water pressure to get it going early enough to actually have any impact on the fire. To top that off, St. John's had unseasonably hot and dry weather. This was in early July. So basically the month of June was like dry and hot. And it was a windy day. So you got dry wood, hot weather, windy, and everything, up against one another, and no water, no fire department. So it just burned uncontrollably. Yeah. And just devastated the entire city.
It's funny.
Pretty much anything that was wood that was gone, and even some of the brick buildings succumbed to the fire. It was that intense.
Anyone watching this should Google it. There's some pictures out there. I mean, the devastation of the city is crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm going to mention the weather again, which is a common thing.
Pierre and I about that cold wind coming down there.
I just stepped into the shade, and it's supposed to be 22 degrees today, but
it's about 12 in here.
If
maybe.
you're going on this tour, ladies and gentlemen, dress appropriately. Take an extra sweater because it is very cool right now where we are.
That wind coming down there has got a chill up my back. I don't mind telling you.
Keeps you alive here, though, doesn't it?
It sure does. Just invigorates you, right? Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. That's one thing. Hey, we're out in the middle of the North Atlantic here, right? The easternmost point of North America is the contiguous North America is just a couple of kilometers east of here. So,
and it's balmy right here now in the sunshine.
And now it just warmed up, man. You almost feel like you got to put your sunscreen on. Maybe you want to, go tarp down or something, right? Water Street, like a lot of interesting things about Water Street. I mean, I could do a tour and I could just hang out on Water Street for all day, telling people stories about this. Like, all of these buildings along here were pretty much merchant buildings back in the day.
Yeah.
A lot of the names, the big names early on were like Ayers and Bowring. And if you look, you can see that the name of the street across there is Ayers Cove, which was named for the businesses that were by the street. The next one over is Baird's Cove. But if anybody's walking here and you walk into these streets and there's no water at the end of them, you wonder, why are they called Cove? Well, that's because the Harbor Drive here wasn't constructed until 1965. Prior to that, there were a series of finger wharfs, as they call them, that would you'd go down to the end of those streets, and the wharf would just go out into the harbor where the ships could come in and tie up and load and unload. So you get some unusual names and stuff like it's Water Street, and we're not really all that close to the water anymore, But but Harbor Drive is an essential artery around here. I mean, it makes the traffic flow so much easier through the downtown. But the merchants in Newfoundland up until Confederation, they basically had a monopoly on business down here, and they used a system that they call the truck system, which was basically that they would supply the fishermen with their gear and everything at the beginning of the summer and put it on credit, and the fishermen would pay them off in the fall with their salt fish, their dried fish. It basically led to almost like an indentured servitude kind of thing, because you were always in debt. Like I remember my grandfather's telling me about dealing with the merchants in Newfoundland and stuff, and they said like they never ever had money in their pocket, or very rarely had money in their pocket because they got everything on credit and they paid it off, and just the system was set up so much in favor of the merchants that even at the end of the season, if it was a good season, the fishermen still came out of it with very little extra. And then of course they had to charge their things for the winter, food and everything, and clothes for the kids and all that kind of stuff, so it was a very difficult time for the working man in Newfoundland to be dealing with those kind of systems, right?
It's amazing when you think about what our ancestors had to go through to survive, and the resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing a lot of people don't realize about St. John's is that for the first half of the 20th century, it had one of the most advanced public transportation systems in North America.
Really?
In 1900, they put in streetcars on Water Street, 2 tracks, one going in each direction. And it was the cable car system, or streetcar system. Yeah. Sorry, I'll get the right words. The streetcar system here rivaled that of any major city in North America, including San Francisco.
Wow.
It was a very extensive network, and it was a beautiful car. It's like the old classic, wood and like a plush velvet seats and all that kind of thing. It was like the pride of the city for quite a number of years. 770,000 cobblestones were brought from Gaff Topsails in central Newfoundland here to lay for the street to build the tracks and to make the street for the cable cars. It was an amazing endeavor. It came to an end in 1947, and at that time we also were forced to change sides of the road. Of course, we were part of the British Empire at that time, so we drove on the same side of the road as in Britain, the left-hand side of the road. But the buses that they bought to replace the outgoing cable cars, streetcar system, were built for the right side of the road. So the buses that we brought in were the reason we switched to the other side of the road. It actually happened prior to joining Canada in 1949. So.
Man, you're a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Pierre, look at the fog. Wow. So if anyone is watching this and it's for the first time they've ever seen St. John's,
welcome to St. John's on a sunny day in June, right?
There's a hill behind there called Signal Hill.
Yep, and sitting on top of Signal Hill is Cabot Tower, which is an old building that's been around for a long time. Now, if you come on my walking tour, you won't see it, but I can certainly tell you a little bit about it. it's been known for a number of different things. It was there for there's a battery up there for defense of the harbor during wartime, particularly back in the earlier days when the British and the French were scrapping over fish and land here in Newfoundland. But most famously, perhaps it's known for Guglielmo Marconi receiving the first transatlantic wireless cable message at the tower up on Signal Hill. I'm going to guess it was probably a little less foggy than it is today up there, though. Maybe that probably would have helped.
You know what, Pierre? I'm going to say something about that. I spent 30 years in the media business, and I started in radio, moved into print, then I went into digital marketing. It's always motivated me to know that the birthplace of communications is right here in St. John's. I literally live pretty close to it, and I can see it. When I go out on my front step, I can see Cabot Tower, Signal Hill. What an incredible feat.
Yeah, it really is. St. John's has found itself at the forefront of, and Newfoundland in general has found itself at the forefront of, so many world developments, so many important things. Like the fishery here was of vital importance back in Europe. To feed the soldiers to fight the wars over there that eventually spilled over here. The North Atlantic Accord in World War II was signed off in our waters. With Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt.
Let's walk.
Yeah, different.
Keep going. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so many things.
I think
did Charles Lindbergh land here?
I think he flew.
Did he fly
through the Narrows? I remember seeing on one of the Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was called. The other thing that it struck me too is, the American involvement. When I read about I live in Pleasantville actually, which used to be Fort Pepperell.
Right.
But I did some research because my 14-year-old is showing some interest in it, and they built. Everyone said when I was growing up, oh yeah, they're all temporary buildings. And I read the other day that they had a 99-year lease, and they built in Newfoundland, they built them to last the full 99 years because they felt it was so strategic. They felt they'd be here for that long. Well, I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, this harbor in World War II was a site of constant activity for the convoys, going back and forth across the North Atlantic. The war effort stuff. I mentioned earlier the screech-ins.
Yep.
The tradition of giving cheap Jamaican rum to foreigners didn't start with the screech-in. Apparently it started with the Americans that were here during World War II. The locals used to like to give them the cheap screech and see the look on their face when they drank it. It was pretty poor quality stuff. Sorry.
I remember, Pierre, growing up, we'd come down here and we'd see the Portuguese ships here,
the White Fleet,
and the gentlemen would all be out playing soccer, and if the ball went in the harbor, they'd dive in, go get it.
Too, yeah.
That's not a body of water that I'd be too interested in diving into.
No, me either. I mean, you got to be pretty hardy if you want to go diving in there.
So let me ask you this, for the tour itself, is this part of the walk, or is this something I've brought you on a deviation?
Well, I just assumed we were heading back to where we started, but no, this part here, we will duck down to the harbor front there where we pulled in, but this part right here will not be on the tour.
Okay.
The tour from there would go up past the ship inn and up towards the Anglican Cathedral, and then up to Jelly Bean Row, and eventually up to the Colonial Building, which is a beautiful piece of architecture and has some amazing stories as well. And then the tour from there will head down to the War Memorial and finish at Harbourfront Park.
Well, I'm sorry for deviating and taking you off the beaten path, but I think what my intention was in this is people getting to know you and listening to you talk. I just want you to keep talking. It's just there's so much that I've never known about my own city. So I think what you and Melissa are doing here is really important, really important.
Well, thank you, Jerry, and we're really excited about it. We're working hard now to, get promotion and get advertising out there and get it in front of people so that they'll know our tour is there. Because of the program that we went through, we are a little bit later getting going than would be ideal. But we figure with our skill sets that we can still make this work no problem. And once we start getting people, it'll sort of take on a life of its own and just carry forward. That's how we think it's going to work. We think we've done a good job of putting this together. We've got some great stories. take people to, you know, a lot of interesting places around downtown. You know, it's I don't know, it's a big work, but it's exciting, man. I'm really, really excited for that first day when I get to take a group of people around here and, you know, and start telling some stories. Because when I get into that kind of mode, I just kind of forget myself. And as a friend of mine told me, she said, you know, when you really get into your story, she said, there's a bit of the old skipper that comes out in you. And I'm like, yeah, I know, there he is. You know, but, you know, that's just me.
Did you spend time at sea?
No.
No? Okay.
No, not at all.
No?
Never fished, nothing. No, we didn't have any fishermen in my family. No? Both my grandfathers were on boats, but they were engineers as opposed to fishermen.
So growing up in Arnold's Cove, you could see the ocean, though, could you?
All the time.
Yeah.
It was just down the hill from my house.
Did you go out in like small boats at all?
Oh yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff. And you know, when I say I didn't fish, I mean like I never fished as work, right? But of course, we love to. As kids, you love to go out in the boat in the summer and, you know, jig a couple of cod, man, you know, cut those up and cook them. You know, beautiful. You know, that's one of the things about growing up in Newfoundland. I think it's a little bit different now. The outport communities are not as vibrant and lively as they once were. Right. But growing up around here and being able to do things like that is... One thing about Newfoundland that I found made travel challenging is that I often found myself in these amazing places, and they were amazing places, but I often found myself feeling just a tiny bit underwhelmed. You know, I shouldn't say often, but occasionally, you know, feel a little bit underwhelmed. But I came to realize, initially I thought it was like, am I not appreciating this appropriately or what? But what I came to realize is that we're just so blessed with so much natural beauty and everything around this place that when you go other places, it's hard to outdo this, right? Yeah. It's hard to outdo this. And I mean, like downtown St. John's, it's a modern city, but it's got that, you know, that small town vibe to it. It's got an older feel to it, where so many of the buildings are older, you know, and they're maintaining them and keeping them up, and just an amazing city.
And again, as we walk by, there is a lot of work going on here to maintain the infrastructure of this city. So it's kind of I've really enjoyed this walk for so many reasons. Learning about the city from someone who's obviously incredibly knowledgeable. What I also like is that some of the people, you know, one guy gave us a little tip. Yeah. People are just being Newfoundlanders, hey?
Saying hello.
So we are right now on the corner of Beck's Cove and Water Street, heading back to where we started. Yeah. Which this tour is, you're just talk again a little bit about your tours. Well, signature tour.
There's going to be two tours that we're offering. The one is the signature tour, and then one we call the core tour. The signature tour is a longer tour. It's about 3 kilometers, and we'll run about 2 hours and 15 to about 2 hours and 30 minutes. And the core tour focuses entirely on like Water Street, Duckworth Street, so the downtown core. Just that way we can still share a lot of the same stories that we share on the signature tour, but it's a little bit shorter, a little bit less elevation for people who are, prefer a shorter tour with a little less hills. You know, just sort of open the options up to make it accessible to more people, you know, or desirable to more people.
So when it comes to, bringing a beverage along to make sure they are hydrated, do you recommend that, or do you have time to stop and get something somewhere?
We definitely recommend you bring something along, but we are going to have a spot or two that we can stop along the way for refreshments. Ideally, we'd like to have something that, one place at least that's something of a local flavor, you know, something where maybe you could get a local treat. So we are going to have that in there. We still got about 10 days to figure out exactly where we're going to put that, but we'll get it in there somewhere. The problem is that most of the things seem to be very near the beginning. Yeah. But we'll work it out. We'll figure something out. But yeah, it's always good to bring your own water and stuff anyway. But
Pierre, here we are. We're back. I'll just do a little circle. We're back to where we started. Will all the tours start here? Is that the plan?
Yes, that is the plan so far.
Okay.
Both of the tours will start here, and that's 2 tours for now. We are going to be adding others as time goes by. There'll probably be a photo walk tour that we'll put in sometime, I'm guessing maybe about mid-July by the time we get everything sussed out, but that'll be something we'll advertise when it comes out, and it'll be on the website as well. And that'll be just me taking people to different parts of downtown to get those pictures they see online that, oh, I want to take that picture.
Yeah.
So we'll be bringing that kind of tour in as well. And we've got visions, Jerry, for like 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. Like, we're thinking even eventually tours where we have vehicles and we're driving people to places and things like that, So we see that what we're doing now, this is just the beginning. And, the end, it's, the possibilities are endless,
Pierre, in all of your experience, now that you're on the cusp of opening this business, we ask our guests always to offer some advice. What advice would you give to an inspiring entrepreneur, or just anyone in general? Just anything come to mind in terms of some advice?
Yep, absolutely. The one thing that has struck me through this whole process is that there are lots of options out there for people if you want to start a small business. I hear from so many people that it's like, oh, there's, nobody wants to help you, and nobody wants to chip in or, support what they're doing or anything. But I found it to be the complete opposite. But you got to have an idea. You need to bring something new. Something that fills a gap in a marketplace. And we, in my process of going through this SEA program, I found nothing but support everywhere I turned, because they could tell I believed in it, so they believed in it, and they wanted to be a part of it. And you'll find that if you go to people with enthusiasm and a good idea, they'll get enthusiastic with you. And, but just keep looking, just keep working, and just keep trying, and then never give up on it. Just be prepared for hard work, because it is. You think it's not hard work, but when you got to sit down and do 4 or 5 hours of research someday to, for stories for a walking tour, it's,
Well, I think you've given great advice there, Pierre. I tell you, I know Alan wished he could be here, but I can tell you this: we are so excited for you and for what you and Melissa are doing for this community.
Yeah.
You're bringing something to this community. You're not just sitting around. You're just making something happen. And for that, we thank you.
Thank you. We're really excited to do it. We want to do our best to be good ambassadors for our city and our province, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that the people that come here and entrust us with their time have a great experience, because everybody that comes here should, because it's a magnificent place, and I can't wait to start taking people out and showing them around our amazing city.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds. That's galeforcewinds, WINS.com.